Yo, 95% Rookie here. We're going to be doing something a little different today. I'm just going to be recording, we're going to go on a bit of a patrol with these AAF guys. We're looking for FIA patrols in the area. We're on Stratus, as you can see, and I'm just going to be, while we're going on this patrol, I mean, we might not even encounter any enemies for all I know, but we're going to just be discussing some lore stuff. It's kind of be just an informal, like, I don't know, discussion on some light lore stuff. I have some topics arranged and everything. Just, I'm working on a larger video for the AAF in general. I won't really say too much about it, but, this is kind of just like I had some thoughts while I was working on that, so, yeah, right now we're just kind of a fire team going on patrol. But yeah, the AAF generally, they're usually, it seems like their main, like, the unit encountered is they're very much like a motorized unit, a motorized faction. Well, there are mechanized as well. They have APCs and stuff as well, but, you know, a lot of the time you'll see them driving around these MRAPs. And, you know, I've seen some question as far as, like, and I kind of agree, the question as far as, like, how big the AAF is, like, versus, like, realistically, like, their equipment and stuff. Like, if you look at the, they're described as, like, a battalion-sized force with like, a, like 1,000 to 2,000 like men, basically, is how you would describe them. Yeah, I'd say like they're in terms of like military, like NATO standards, they're like an enlarged battalion. They have technically 2 regiments, which they're only one of those is like a dedicated combat regiment. Although I'm sure like the other troops, like in the service company I think they're called squadrons actually, but the service units are probably pressed into combat, you know, when the need arises. But yeah, like, about battalion size, so like, you know, I'd say like 1,000 to 2,000 depending on how many personnel are in the support units. I might have the order of battle on screen just to display some of this stuff, but like, yeah, the 1st regiment has several companies. Has like a motorized, or like 2 motorized, or rather, what is it? It's like motorized, mechanized, armored, but it's more like a heavy infantry because it also has mechanized and like more armored APCs. And but basically, anyways, they also have armored units, so they have these tanks. Now they have, actually, I'm gonna get out here and just do some recon. They have these they have like, basically they're called Kumas in game, but they're basically leopard tanks. So they're like basically a main battle tank. And during 2035, like, these are probably quite antiquated. Like, the leopards are not that new, and I forget what variant exactly. I'm not like super knowledgeable in tanks, but yeah, anyways, basically, why would the AAF, which is the smaller military, have like main battle tanks, especially when their primary mission is basically to fight like a guerrilla insurgency? They also have these light tanks, which are what they're called in game, but they're basically like I think they're called weasels in German military service. They're like tankettes, kind of like autocannons and stuff, and those make much more sense in my opinion. As far as like a battalion size force, like, if you're talking a military this small, they're really not going to have all that much capacity as far as like training and stuff goes. Like, I'm assuming, like, before, you know, when they were tied in with NATO more, they're probably more like getting their training from like NATO forces. So they probably like I know, like, compared to real life, Jamaica, I was looking into, has like a very similarly sized military in terms of like about battalion size strength or something like that. And actually, Jamaica, they export all of their officer training beyond like a basic training to, depending on their field of school, they'll be sent to a Canadian or a British or American, I think, officer training school, and they kind of like as an exchange, and they'll get their officer training from these like foreign groups. And I think that makes sense for the AAF, especially for like if you're talking like main battle tank training. Like, they probably need to have expert like exterior people because they just don't have the infrastructure set up for like full-on maintenance, and I mean maintenance probably, but like training for these tank crews. Basically, we just out here and going on foot. But so yeah, like, and the other thing, like, compared to Jamaica, which is, I think Jamaica is very, very interesting as far as like a military goes. It's like a defense force, and yeah, they have like several companies of infantry like around the size of the AAF. Only difference is the Jamaicans, the Jamaican Defense Force or whatever, they do not have any tanks. They have armored cars, And realistically, like, yeah, I think it would make more sense for the AAF to be more focused on armored cars rather than having all these APCs and tanks and stuff. But, oh, I'm taking fire, actually. Okay. We'll try to talk through this, but, get into some cover. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that the Jamaicans, like, they're not a... Jamaica isn't, like, a military dictatorship versus the AAF, which is, like, it's a military junta governing the military. So, like, when you compare to that, it's like, I think it does make sense for them to have some heavier equipment. Now, main battle tanks, maybe not, just because, like, the mission doesn't necessarily make sense. Like, realistically, the AAF is not going to be able to stand toe-to-toe with, like, a bigger military that would be fielding something you would need tanks against. And especially with, like, the way you see, like, tanks being used on the modern battlefield, like, these tanks would be taken out rather quickly, and they only have, what, like, they have a company with these tanks, but that maybe, like, what, 2 platoons, maybe, like, 8 tanks, something like that. I mean, unit sizes in Arma 3 are very hard to come across because, you know, there's enemies spawning in and you're killing them, not necessarily to convey that's how big the military is, but just for gameplay purposes. So, like, you know, who knows how many of these leopards they actually had, but yeah, it doesn't really make too much sense as far as, like, why they would need them. But, you know, I think you can hand wave it a bit because, yeah, it's a military government. These were probably bought cheap as surplus when they were tied closer in with the European Union. Like, maybe these are even... Honestly, these tanks are probably from before they left the EU, which was before the Civil War, I think. So, they're probably, you know, they're definitely older. And, I mean... Oh, my guys are taking fire here. There they are. Got them both. Anyways, where was I? I'm going deaf now. Let me put my earplugs in. Actually, I don't have earplugs. Shit. Whatever. Playing with Ace, after all. Oh, well, the hearing loss is temporary. Okay. Glory is forever. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so yeah, they're probably older tanks, you know. And like, as far as, like, yeah, it's a military junta, like, why wouldn't they, or it's definitely like a military prestige thing, I think, right? Like, rather than phasing out the tanks out of service, they want to be seen as, like, a stronger military than they maybe are. And, you know, in game, none of this logistical stuff, like, as far as, like, oh, how would they be operating these main battle tanks with the infrastructure and stuff, none of that's really touched upon. So, you know, as far as we know, there's no issues with these tanks, but, you know, realistically, probably be some kind of maintenance issues, unless, like, I mean, it would make sense that the AAF is pouring literally all of their budget into, like, you know, their military, or, you know, the country's budget, considering the economy is not doing very well, especially because, you know, Altus is like a tourism-focused country, and when you're in, like, a civil war, it's more like a light civil war, I guess, with the FIA in the current situation in 2035, but, you know, tourism probably isn't going to be on the top of everyone's mind as far as going to Altus, especially with the way, like, the rest of the world seems to be going through economic troubles. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure they get a lot of help from the CSAT as far as, like, these tanks and stuff go as well. You know, they're probably, in fact, they're given, like, the more advanced CSAT tanks, and that's probably, like, seen as, like, well, we're pivoting to CSAT, so we'll start, you know, taking in some CSAT equipment. That's probably kind of explains that. What else? But yeah, anyways, as I was saying, like, comparing it to Jamaica, I think makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm sure there are other smaller defense forces and stuff, but, like, from what I saw, they're very similar in terms of, like, Jamaica isn't fighting, like, a rebellion or anything. So, like, honestly, Jamaica is a bad example in that sense, that there would be less militarized than the AAF. Although, I think Jamaica, as far as island size, it is similar to Altus, but I think they would probably have a larger population than what Altus has, especially considering, like, they talk about how the AAF butchered half their population. Now, whether they actually literally took out half their population, or if, like, half of them fled, or, like, you know, we don't really know we don't know all that many details as far as Altus goes demographically or economically or anything. It's kind of, like, left up to imagination, but you can imagine the economy isn't doing too well anyways. But yeah, I like the idea of the AAF, like, they would send some of their officers and other training like to, well, initially NATO and the EU, but then, you know, switching over to CSAT, they would start getting training from them, especially because, you know, even not even sending them, like the CSAT has like a whole like military infrastructure set up on Altus and Stratus now. So that, you know, all this training and stuff would be going on Altus itself. That's so they wouldn't, they probably have like, you know, training facilities and training like programs set up on the island itself, both CSAT and NATO before, you know, the split. That makes sense. And as far as like another thing that doesn't, it makes less sense to me than the tanks would be like they have like F-16s. There are smaller militaries which operate like more advanced fighter craft, you know, like maybe like a, like what do you call it? Like a, I forget, I honestly forget military organization. I think squadron is like the smallest, like wing is bigger than that, but I think like you know, they'd operate like a squadron of F-16s or whatever, like maybe there are smaller militaries, but I think a country on the size of Altus, that seems a little unrealistic just of how expensive those more advanced fighter craft can be. And like also the capability, like what is the AAF really going to do with that? Now, at the start, before the Jets DLC, they actually had buzzards, I think they're called, but they're basically like they're more of a training / attack aircraft. So like they're not like set up for air superiority or like multi-role. And that makes a lot of sense, more sense to me. Like they would want like something more, or like a Super Tucano or something, like a prop plane that would be like designed for air support, but not so much, you know, not so much air superiority stuff, because, you know, realistically, like the AAF is not going to keep control over the sea based on like who's going to be attacking them, or over the air rather. So like they would probably want something for their mission, which would be, you know, anti-terror, anti-insurgency stuff. But yeah, that makes sense to me as far as like jets go. Like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me that they would have these, like, I forget what they're called in game. I think they're basically F-16s, I'm pretty sure. But you know, they were added in the jets. You'll see they wanted to give a jet to the AAF, so you know, I won't really begrudge like in terms of like not making sense. It's like they just wanted a jet to give the AAF for the DLC, and well, the F-16 makes sense because it's like, you know, selling it as surplus or whatever. I actually, you know, I'm not even sure if the F-16, maybe it is like a Eurofighter or something. I'm not even sure about that, so take that with a grain of salt. Not really a jet guy as far as Arma goes. I wonder if there's any more patrols out here anyways. We ran into like those two guys. Yeah, and then as far as like, so there's two regiments within the AF, right? There's the first regiment, which is like a combat dedicated regiment. They have, as I said before, like a motorized company, which is like armored cars. Actually, I think they have two. They have a motorized company, which is armored cars. They have a second motorized company, which is, actually, let me check this. They have, so Bravo or Alpha Company, which is motorized infantry. Yeah, okay, so they have two motorized companies, and one of them is more equipped with armored cars, and one of them has trucks and stuff. And then they have the, like, a mechanized company, which is like APC, like wheeled APCs. And then they have like a heavier company, which is like APCs, tanks, infantry. And then they have, yeah, they have out in the tanks DLC, they have the like lighter armored company, which is like Echo Company or something, and it's like those lighter tanks, which make a lot of sense. I think the lighter tanks make a lot more sense than the main battle tanks, but it's like, you know, they probably just wanted like a tank and they weren't really thinking too much about it, especially with the way Arma 3's development went, that there was a lot of stuff cut and a lot of different ideas. Like they were originally supposed to be like the Hellenic Armed Forces with like Greece, which would make more sense for them to have tanks. All my guys are good, right? Yeah, we have 4 guys. No one died. Maybe they were hit or something. But then, yeah, so then there's the 3rd Support Regiment, which, you know, famously led by Major Gavraz. And he's like a, you know, he's like one of the only AAF characters, really, apart from, like, Orestes or whatever, like the defector guy, and then, like, you know, the main bad Acanteros or whatever. And, but yeah, 3rd Support Regiment, so they're supporting, basically, so, you know, they have a medical squad. I think they're called squadrons in the order of battle, which is a little weird, but, I mean, maybe they used to be like a cavalry unit or something, I don't know. But yeah, so there's like medical, there's service, which I think in the military, service generally means like you're doing a lot of stuff, like not just maintenance, but like all the things needed for military apart from combat, which is kind of weird that they have a separate service unit. Maybe service is like the service squadron would be like for general yeah, I don't know, like everything basically, and then like the dedicated medical maintenance, all that stuff can be like dedicated to those specific things, and the service unit would just be kind of jack of all trades. They're helping you with everything, or also just a support company as far as combat goes. Like maybe they operate artillery or something. That would make sense. But yeah, that makes sense to me as far as, and then they have the like air forces, which spot is nice. 240 meters. Oh, see, oh, there they are down there. But yeah, and then they have like fixed wing. The fixed wing stuff. It's like I think operating helicopters makes sense. They don't have like attack helicopters, which also makes sense. Like they have utility helicopters with rocket pods and gun pods and stuff, which, you know, you wouldn't probably want a small military like the AAF operating like Apaches or something. Got him. Wait, no, he's crawling. I get him. But yeah, fixed wing, that makes sense. Like I don't have any grudge with that. Then there's like a naval maritime squadron, which also makes a lot of sense as far as like a country like Altus, like an island nation, especially with like dealing with the Civil War. Your smuggling is going to be one of your top priorities. So I imagine this maritime squadron, although it's seen as a single unit, there's probably a decent amount of patrol boats as far as like, you would want a quite a lot of patrol boats to be, like, you know, because that's the way the enemy is going to be getting their stuff, basically. Apart from, I guess, smuggling it in rather than through gun runners, through, like, you know, shipping containers and stuff. Or, like, you know, not civilian goods disguised, or military goods disguised as civilian goods, which, that also makes sense. And, you know, black market stuff on the island, like, I'm sure a lot of corrupt AAF guys are selling weapons and equipment meant for the AAF to the FIA. I'm sure that's a thing that happens. Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much gone over what I want to go over, so we'll just confirm these kills over here. Yeah, it's just a nice little, I'm going to edit this down as much as I can, try to make it pretty short, just kind of a little bit of a discussion. And then, yeah, like I said, I have this other, I'll probably have this other AF video which will go a lot more in depth as far as that kind of stuff. It'll be more structured, less me just talking. But yeah, thanks for watching, and like, subscribe, all that stuff if you want more Arma 3 stuff. And yeah, this is generally just gonna be my gaming channel. I mean, right now I'm still doing Arma 3 stuff, but I might upload some more tactical gaming related stuff at some point as I feel like it. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, and see ya.